Welcome to the Spectrum of Health podcast. My name's Jav, and today, guys, we've got a very special guest, Bodyworker, sex and intimacy coach, Libby Sheppard. Firstly, I want to thank you for joining me. I came across your work. I was doing some Googles, and I came across your website, saw your social media, watched about 3 of your longer IGTV videos, and I was just saying to myself, I've got to get you on. And it was funny because maybe a week or 2 before I'd actually emailed you, I was saying to my friend that I want to get like either a sex coach or like a relationship coach on the podcast. And she was saying to me that if you put it out there, it's going to come to you. And it was just funny that, exactly, it's true. Yeah, it's crazy. So she was saying that to me. And then I was just saying, you know, I'm gonna find somebody. So yeah, firstly, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really honoured and flattered as well. I'd like to receive your inquiry, and
thank you.
I think it's like I said in our little chat that we had, it's anyone who is willing to talk about sex, about intimacy, and have kind of an open and honest and vulnerable conversation about something that's so complicated and so complex. I think that you're a pretty cool person, so I'm happy to be here and have a good old chat with you.
Well, I'm happy to have you. I'm happy to have you. So, obviously, I introduced you, you know, as a body worker and a sex and intimacy coach. I'm gonna say there's probably gonna be a few people out there that are going to ask, what is a body worker? I was thinking that too, and I kind of learned what it was just from viewing your content and reading some of your blog pieces as well. It was just like, okay, I'm getting a bit of a better understanding of exactly what that is. So if you could kind of put it into your own words, we'll get onto the sex and intimacy coaching, but I want to know exactly how you would describe
this word,
body worker.
Yeah. So the reason that I describe myself as a body worker and not a massage therapist is that kind of traditional idea of massage, it gives the sense that maybe the person being touched is a little bit more passive. And also that you are trying to fix something in their body as a massage therapist. And it also kind of really only typically looks at like the physical aspect of someone's body. So I refer to myself as a body worker, and there's this kind of whole field of body workers or body practitioners who are working more with not just the physical, but more the emotional and the energetic, the spiritual aspect of the body, the person. And the way that I approach and that I use touch is not necessarily to kind of fix or, make something better or make problems go away. The way that I'm using touch and working with the body is as a way to kind of help people have more awareness and more enjoyment and more connection to their body. Does that kind of
make so
sense?
It's more than this, you get a rub and then you could go. Like, there's levels, there's layers to it more. Okay, that's interesting. So I guess to kind of follow that, I kind of want to know what kind of led you down the path to doing that? What got you into it?
It's a complicated thing because and it's not necessarily like something that you get told in sixth form. Yeah, like you could be a body worker, or you could be. So full disclosure, my sessions include genital touch, anal massage, internal touch, and internal massage. So it's not like there's a nice linear trajectory from school to here. But I trained as a personal trainer back in 2012. I also am a qualified sports massage therapist. So that's kind of the physical background, the practical background. I've always been interested in the body, how we enjoy our bodies, how we move our bodies, how we engage with our bodies, how we can support our bodies to be optimal and healthy. And that's kind of that aspect of it. And then I think I've always been curious about the sexual aspect of myself, or myself as a sexual being. And I was at university, and I had the opportunity to work as a pole dancer, and that kind of was my first like experience of using or engaging with my sexuality as a kind of thing that I enjoyed and felt empowered by. And then, maybe like 2012, 2013, I got introduced to tantra through a partner that I was with at the time. And that sort of led me down this rabbit hole into exploring like an alternative narrative around sex and around intimacy, compared to sort of what I'd been told growing up,
right?
Which was very shame-based, right. And that we shouldn't explore sexuality, and I'd not been given maybe the healthiest messages about sex.
Right, because I was just going to ask you. You said an alternative sort of viewpoint. What was the, I guess, non-alternative? What was the route? What was kind of what you was being fed about sex and about sexuality growing up?
So I think, I can only speak for myself, but I know from friends and a lot of clients that I've worked with that there's some patterns. So I didn't have many conversations with my parents about sex growing up. I didn't have an open dialogue with anyone. There was no one really that I could ask questions, and no one to kind of give me any positive encouragement or guidance. In fact, a lot of the implicit and explicit messages that I got about being sexual were that's kind of slutty and bad and shameful, and you shouldn't be thinking about sex, you shouldn't be exploring sex. So that was kind of within my household, but then that's then put against this very strange idea that gets planted through the media of like sex is everywhere, and as a woman you should be like, that's all that you are, like you're just a sexual thing, but don't be too sexual. It's this right. Kind of very confusing messages. So for me, my experience of sex was very blanketed in shame and confusion, and right. It was something that I didn't feel confident to talk about or ask about or do in a very conscious way. Right. So that was a big shift then when I started exploring tantra. Yeah. So you mentioned a bit about, you just said there, didn't feel confident about discussing it. What about within your peer group or within your friends? Because as a guy, I think obviously our experiences as men and women are quite different in the sense that I think men are we are sort of allowed to engage in sex in any kind of way we want. We're supposed to be dominant. We're supposed to be all these things. And I think when a guy can't live up to certain expectations, he might feel shame. But to go back to my original point, I think men generally, we're okay with talking about it amongst our friends. And I think it's not really looked down upon or frowned upon for a man to openly talk about sex, whereas women, I always feel like they're a bit more kind of reserved in that regard. So in terms of your friendship group, is that something growing up you were able to sort of talk about freely? Yeah, so I have a question for you in a minute about that and your experience as a man. But so during my teenage years, I would say it was not something that we kind of talked. I don't remember having conversations that were enlightening or that I felt okay about. That sex was kind of talked about in a way that's like, well, you just have to get it done. Like it's something that you're just supposed to do. Yeah. Like, well, are you doing it yet? Are you doing it? Well, I don't know. Like a lot of uncertainty and not really knowing how to talk about it without almost like losing face, or there wasn't an idea of how to talk about it in a very vulnerable or real way. So then my question that I have for you is, So as a man and in your peer group and with your friends growing up, and now maybe the dialogue is more open about sex, but is that dialogue, or does that dialogue involve vulnerability and kind of saying like, hey man, I'm struggling with this, like, and I don't really know what to do, and like, you know, I've been struggling with my partner, and you know, it's like, do you feel this? What's your experience? So is there that vulnerability, or is it more kind of bravado and you know, bigging each other up?
I would say it's definitely more bravado, 100%. I think I've got some close friends who we may have had conversations talking about maybe coming too fast or something like that. But it's always in a lighthearted, jokey manner. And I think that if someone was feeling, if someone was struggling with that on a regular basis, I still don't think, even as close as me and some of my friends are, I still don't think that that's something we'd probably talk about. So I do think that vulnerability, a layer of it is missing. Okay, we can talk about it. I can come to you and be like, yo, I came really early. I didn't really feel too good about it, but it'll still be in a banter type of way. And obviously I think a lot of men do that because like I was saying before, I think that we're kind of taught to believe that we're supposed to be dominant and, I should be able to last forever, which obviously no one could do that, right?
Like I should just be ready on.
Or if she wants to go, I should be ready. I shouldn't have a problem getting an erection.
Yeah.
So,
and this is as harmful for men and you know, and for women as the kind of shaming and you know, negative ideas that women are given about their bodies. I think humor and banter and lightheartedness is so important. Like, I'm not saying every conversation about sex should be like, you know, very serious and like you're talking to your therapist, but that's what I see is kind of missing in people's ability to really relax and enjoy sex in the moment, because all of that kind of vulnerability or avoidance of vulnerability gets, like, you know, compressed into these experiences with when you're actually in the moment and having sex with someone, and all of that stuff is going on in your head, like, I hope I don't come too quickly, or like, I hope I, you know, as a woman, like, I hope I'm sexy, does he think I'm sexy, and do I, you know, all this kind of, all the stuff that's playing around in our heads around sex that we don't maybe have the space to talk about in a vulnerable and real way. And that's why a lot of the people that I work with who think that they're coming, you know, just for a sensual, intimate massage, actually the most profound part of the experience is to sit down and talk about these things for the first time ever, perhaps in their life, to openly say to someone, yeah, like, me and my partner don't have sex anymore and I don't know what to do, and you know, I find it really difficult to get an erection, and you know, it's really affecting my life, it's affecting my relationship. Nobody else must be struggling with this. I'm broken, I'm a failure, blah blah blah. So I think, you know, I've gone off on a tangent a bit, but
fine.
But that's, so as much as I say I'm a body worker and I work with touch, one of the biggest aspects is just being able to listen to people and hear people, and for people to have a space to actually bring awareness to these things that are limiting them or preventing them from relaxing and enjoying.
Right. That's interesting. So when they come for their massage, you have I'm guessing before you do the actual massage, there's a period where you discuss their own sexual experiences and what they're going through.
A little chat and a little check-in, and talk to them about maybe what we'll do today. And it's kind of half therapy, half massage. You know? I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a psychologist though, so I'll just kind of caveat that. But yeah, we do kind of spend a little bit of time during the session talking before any clothes come off or any touch starts.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So to put it into the most like simple words, what is a tantra massage?
So before I give a definition, what have you heard about tantra massage? What do you understand of it? And then I'll maybe just fill in some gaps.
Well, I've heard...
Or correct you.
Well, before I had done any research, I just read basically, it was a bit of like where you kind of, a guy might go to basically have some enjoyment and get his genitalia played with, basically. Mm-hmm. Now that I've done a bit of reading, I understand it's a bit more than just going and getting a rub. So...
It can be.
Right, okay.
So I think, so the concept or the word or the wording tantra massage is used very loosely in a lot of places, and sometimes it does just mean a happy ending massage or an escort service or something that's kind of, like you say, just a bit of a rub and tug and not very conscious and nothing to do with spirituality or having a deeper understanding of yourself as a human being. I use that phrase on my website because it is generally what people search for when they're looking for an experience that is going to involve touch on their genitals. So in loose terms, you could kind of just look at it as it's a touch or massage experience that openly includes genital touch. The way that I work with tantra as a more of a kind of philosophy for life and as a spiritual path is very close to mindfulness. So it's...
Keep going.
Keep going. It's very close to mindfulness and brings in more of the sort of practice of being aware of moment to moment sensations in your body, of being very present, of not being attached to a kind of mental or egoic goal, and allowing yourself to kind of just be present with what is happening in your body. And that is facilitated through touch, through someone being in a very clear role of receiving and someone being in a very clear role of giving. So that polarity is created. And for the kind of tantric approach to sex or the tantric approach to life generally is that sexual energy, that kind of life force, is not just something that is there to kind of be like lost in a 5 to 10 seconds kind of peak orgasm. So that would be like an ejaculation for guys, or typically like an orgasm on the clitoris for women. But that energy, if you're horny, if you're turned on and you just sit with it, it is like it's a vibration, it's an energy, it's an electricity. You can feel like the buzz of it in your body. That energy is something that is a fuel for everything that you do in life. For your creativity, for your vitality, for your relationships, for your purpose, your work, your discipline, your dedication, your kind of spiritual or higher path. So all of that, just from, it is so much more than just having a rub and tug. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Does that fill in some gaps?
How important is it then when someone does come to you, you talk about them being present, how important is it that you get them in a space where mentally they're not hanging on to maybe past sexual experiences and thinking that, okay, this massage is going to be like this? And how important is it for you to kind of get them in a space where they're kind of present in the moment and they're detaching themselves from maybe some past experiences or some thoughts that they have before coming to you?
It's super important, and that's why, like, the beginning of sessions, I always take that little bit of time for kind of chat and check in and connection, I slip in a little bit of the philosophy or the kind of more practical aspects of the practice. So simple meditation, being aware of your breath, allowing yourself to make some sound or vibration, letting your body move, noticing when you've got distracted, coming back into the present moment. But it's tough. It's a really. Have you ever tried any meditation or any?
I've tried meditating and yoga. Yeah. Not the best at it, but
it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
It's really challenging to just notice that you have those thoughts and you have a lifetime's worth of experiences and ideas about yourself, about your body, about sex, about intimacy, about life, whatever. It's challenging to let those thoughts be there, but not be consumed by them, to just kind of, let them scoot past and still be present with what you can actually feel in the moment. And that's like, for me, that's the kind of foundation of my personal practice. Is I'm super heady, I'm super busy in my head with thoughts all the time. So for me, this practice, or this tantric approach to life, as well as sex and intimacy, is about trying, as much as possible to just notice and interrupt that and bring myself back to, okay, what can I feel right now? How am I breathing? Where am I tensing up? Where is, what can I feel in my body? What am I aware of in the rest of the room? What do I feel in your body? What do I feel kind of, in the wider sphere of more than just my own little monkey mind?
Right. And I have a friend that who I recorded an episode with previously, and she had some tough experiences in her life, and she was talking about going through like a spiritual awakening and recognizing that when you hear that little voice in your head, it's not your voice, and you need to learn to become the observer. And when she said that to me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm starting to understand that a lot more. And especially when she uses the term like, you're the observer. So you kind of got to view yourself from the outside in. And that when you mentioned that kind of linked in my head a little bit. So I kind of want to talk about your route educationally to get to where you are now. So you was in uni, a friend introduced you to tantra massage. What did you need to do to kind of be like, obviously to be a PT, you've got to get level 3 PT qualification. Like what is the process to kind of do what you do?
Yeah, there's no, at the moment, what I do is a very kind of new and emerging field. Body-based coaching or sexological body work is something that I'm trained in, but that's still pretty new. Having said that, I'm insured. I'm part of a membership body. I have, this official qualification, which is a coaching qualification that is focused on somatics. So it's not just mental, so it's not just talk therapy or talk-based coaching, and it's not just massage. Like I said, that's just about typically it's just about the physical aspect. It's this blend of body and mind. So my personal path through this was, I feel like it's really important that I have had that solid grounding in sports massage and anatomy and physiology, in understanding how the physical body works. But then I've trained in other kind of touch-based practices. So I've trained in something called Lomi massage, which is a beautiful form of Hawaiian body work. It's very, very flowing, very sensual, also has a very deeply rooted and spiritual philosophy to it. I've trained in Thai abdominal massage. I mean, talk about intimate, like for a lot of people, having their belly touched is way more intimate than having their genitals touched. Right. So this is like working with the belly, working with the abdomen it's been really helpful in kind of giving me more understanding of people's bodies and what intimacy kind of means. I'm also trained in something called trauma release exercise, which is a form. It's a really interesting thing. TRE. Maybe we can put a link or something to look it up.
Yeah, we'll do.
So TRE is something that it's a set form of list of exercises. I think there's 7 of them that you do to kind of gently strain the larger muscle groups of your body that are typically involved in the fight or flight response, and are typically overactive or kind of chronically switched on in people who are who have experienced trauma or who are carrying trauma in their bodies. And so you gently stress those, and then that generates this kind of natural tremor or like shake in the body, and it's kind of this natural way for the body to discharge tension, to discharge the kind of trauma and emotional stuff that's stored in the fascia and the muscles. So having an understanding of how trauma works in the body as well has been very, very important. Working with people's experiences of sex. I work with a lot of people who have histories of sexual abuse, who have traumatic experiences. So I personally just think if you are going to work with sexuality, you need to have an understanding of trauma. You need to be trauma informed. You don't need to be a trauma specialist, but like having an understanding of how that might show up in people's bodies, how people might respond or carry those kind of experiences, physically, posturally, emotionally. So that's TRE. So those are the kind of things that inform my practice. And then my main sort of coaching thing around this is sexological bodywork, or somatic sex education, it's also known as.
Right. So I guess because what you do is quite unique, would you say that, I guess you would say that a lot of the work you do, and a lot of the work you do is kind of a blend of everything you've learned throughout all those experiences and all those courses you've done and different types of massage. You kind of put this together to now have your own sort of practice. Okay, wow.
Yeah, and I guess like, you know, as a PT, as a coach, I'm sure it's the same for you. Like you draw on, you know, things that you've learned just through your own, you know, playing career, or, you know, through different types of qualifications or different types of training. And it's not, I think it's rare that people work in a, you know, one exclusive field. I think it's important, you know, if you're going to approach working with people in a holistic way, to have, you know, different things that inform how you work with them.
And I think it makes you better at what you do in a sense as well, because you can draw on different experiences to kind of cater to the individual. And even if we talk about coaching, because I come from a football background, but I've coached in the city, I've coached at CrossFit gyms, I've had a lot of strength and conditioning coaching. Lived in America, seen how they train, had strength and conditioning coaches from America, which can be a little bit different to
like the cultural differences even.
So putting that all into how I view things. Another thing I noticed as well, just talking to my physio, because I have a physio that I see every week, and she we're always talking about how, especially with social media, everybody's got their own biases. So one thing you got to accept is that no one's ever 100% correct. You got to find what's right for you as the individual. So that's something that I've been kind of battling with myself, because even though I kind of want to have my own set ways, I always trying to accept that actually, even though I think this is right, it could potentially be wrong. And I think accepting that is a battle in itself. So to kind of get back to what you do, so I was asking you before we started, how much men do you work with, women? And you said about 65% men. So we'll start with the men. What are some of the issues that what are some of the common issues you see with some of the people that come to you, some of the men that come to you?
To the men specifically. So the most common like reasons for people wanting coaching or wanting to change something in their sexual experience are that they suffer from premature ejaculation, so they feel like they ejaculate too quickly, or they have very little choice around their ejaculation. Erectile dysfunction, so they struggle to get an erection or maintain an erection, and that might be kind of exclusively with a partner, and that then, you know, when they masturbate, it's not such an issue. So it's kind of performance related or performance anxiety related or situational erectile dysfunction, as I kind of call it. Those are the two main ones. And then, I mean, if I make a comparison maybe to personal training clients, like I'm sure you work with people who have, you know, are just starting out on their exercise journey, and they haven't really trained before, and they're talking to you as a PT or a coach because they want some help to they don't know what's going on or how to kind of get started. And then you may work with other clients who are like maybe semi-professional athletes, and they just know that they benefit from having a coach who can kind of see things that they don't see, or maybe program for them. And then you get the people who are in the middle, who are just kind of in maintenance mode, and they know that it helps them to keep motivated to see you. So it's kind of the same.
Okay.
I apply that to, or that's what I see in my clients as well. Some people really need a lot, like they have those specific issues. They're right at the beginning of the journey. They need someone to kind of, they're coming to me because of that specific thing that they want to work on. And then there's people who maybe are not in a relationship, who do not have any physical or intimate contact or connection, and we can talk about how that has, you know, as in like they've never been with a at the moment or for a long time. Right. They haven't been in relationship. There are some people who've never been intimate and, you know, want to kind of come and have a session with me to build some confidence to maybe be with someone in the future. But I'm talking about the people who maybe have not been in a relationship for a long time, or maybe are widowed, or, you know, separated, and just do not have any touch in their lives. And that has kind of like blown up through COVID in the last year, with a lot of people being isolated, and a lot of people realizing like, wow, I'm not receiving any physical contact. I'm not receiving any physical touch. That's kind of depressing and bad for my mental, physical, and emotional health. So those clients are people who maybe see me 3-4 times a year, and that, you know, that's part of their maintenance of their emotional and physical, mental well-being, to come and have connection, to come and have touch in a way that is unpressured and doesn't have that kind of romantic entanglement or expectation from a partner. So, you know, touch is vital and essential. We're humans. We need to be touched. Yeah. So that's kind of that bracket of person. And then there's the guys that I work with who are just like, yep, I'm so happy with my sexuality. My partner and I are really open. I just want to learn more. You know, I want to learn how I can improve, or how I can expand this experience. So does that kind of, there's these, it's not just like one category of person. It's very broad. Okay.
So I want to piggyback off the two main things you mentioned, premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction. The two kind of
specific issues.
So do you ever come across people or men who may come to you thinking that they have a problem with premature ejaculation, but actually they just don't realize that we don't actually, you can't go for hours and hours the first time anyway. So sometimes coming early is actually, it's not as early as you think it is, or is it always actually, they are actually suffering with that? How do you, and I guess you would know that by, how do you know, how do I ask this? How do you know whether it actually is premature ejaculation, I guess would be.
It's a great question. Like, is there some kind of cutoff point?
Right, like is there like an average time?
2 minutes,
yeah,
you're all right.
yeah.
If it's 2 minutes and 1 second, then
exactly.
It's very individual, and I think again we go back to this thing of like, do guys actually share how long they last for, or what is kind of a typical duration before they ejaculate? And I wouldn't say. I mean, I think it's probably like less time than you think during penetration. I think there are some statistics on this that are like really, make me sad. That like penetration, I think typically lasts maybe 3 or 4 minutes maximum.
That's what I was going to say. That's what it is. Yeah,
or like
it's quite short.
An average. Yeah. So I tend to work with, rather than like putting a number or putting a figure on things, what I work with is this idea of how much choice do you have around your ejaculation. So expanding that and feeling the confidence and the body awareness and the ability to regulate your arousal levels. So maybe you want to have a quickie. Maybe you only do want to go for kind of 4 minutes, and that's what that sexual experience is like in that moment, But maybe you want to also be able to last for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. My partner and I have sex for like 2 hours, It's not always all penetration, but the choice is there. Does that make sense? So what I work with those guys is around bringing more awareness to what is happening in your body just before you might typically ejaculate.
Right.
So for a lot of people, arousal is kind of just a 0 to 10 thing, like 0 or 10. It's on or it's off or on. But what I tend to work with is bringing people's awareness into that kind of 3 to 6 or 7 zone. So what is happening in your body with relaxed arousal? How are you breathing? Where do you tense up? What kinds of sensations are you aware of? Making those kind of unconscious aspects of your sexual experience and what is happening with premature ejaculation, or just with ejaculation generally, making those unconscious things conscious.
Right.
So then it's like you have more of a map of what's going on with your body. You understand and can feel a little bit more like, oh yeah, the kind of arousal's creeping up a little bit here. I need to slow down. I know how to do that. I can communicate with my partner in that moment. But you cannot do that if you are not aware of what is actually going on in your body just before that ejaculation happens.
So by helping men become more aware of and maybe even understanding the feelings, they can have more of a choice on whether they want to reach that point or they want to maybe pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, because I think that you got a long video on your Instagram about that specific topic, and that's one that I watched. And you spoke about the deep breathing. Deep breathing when you feel like you're about to come, and sort of bringing yourself back into it. And I thought that was quite interesting, because I think that for me personally, that's not really something I think about. I mean, I can probably tell you how I'm feeling. I can probably tell you where I'm tensing. Like, probably it's called a Kegel.
Yeah, your pelvic floor is kind of squeezing.
You're squeezing that part as a man.
It's an involuntary contraction,
right? Because you feel like you can't. Yeah. And I think that sometimes, I say this to my friends. Sometimes you reach the point of no return.
Yes.
But I think that there must be a way that you can. Is there really a point of no return? Is there a way to?
Yeah, totally. It's just that you need to know what happens like 2 seconds before the point of no return.
Okay. Okay.
Which, it's this either like off or on, you
Right.
know. So yeah, like how aware of your breathing are you generally during sex, during masturbation, would you say? Like how much attention do you pay to it?
I don't think enough. Now that you say it, and I'm thinking about the video specifically, and you talk about, some of the things you can do to stop premature ejaculation, taking really deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. But then I think while I'm in the process of having sex, I'm not thinking about that. So I think
what are you thinking about?
That's a good question. I think I'm just thinking about me personally. I'm always thinking, is she enjoying it?
So you're really like, there's no connection to your own body then.
Right.
You're
Yeah,
really
that's
focused
true.
on, oh my God, is she enjoying it?
Yeah.
Like,
that's true. Yeah.
Are you paying
enough
Are
attention
you
to
grounded
myself?
in your own body at all?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about that either. Yeah, I'm definitely always thinking, is the other person enjoying it?
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful. I think that, for as a man to be present to what is happening in your partner and to be attentive to her pleasure is wonderful. But you would maybe be more effective in that if you were also able to stay connected to your own body. To stay at, like, my tantra teacher talks about the kind of 80-20 rule. 80% awareness out, 20% like what is going on in my own body. Okay, let's just check in with home base here. Is everything kind of relaxed?
Yeah.
Is everything, flowing? And then take your feeling into her, feeling into your partner, what's going on there. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's good. And then obviously the erectile dysfunction. What are some of the things that guys who may suffer with that, like what are some of the things they can do to kind of, I guess, to stop it from happening or reduce the chances of it happening? Obviously it can happen at any moment with any guy, but I can say from a health and fitness perspective, there's some things you want to be doing that can maybe potentially assist in not having that happen. Like make sure you're training, nutrition, diet, make sure you're looking after yourself, being active, and not even just physically, but mentally as well. Because I think some of that is not just from physical, but it's also kind of not mentally being in the right space. So you can't actually do that, too much stress, all those kind of things. What are some of the things that you kind of recommend, or how do you how do you help people with that?
All of those things that you mentioned. And the thing with ED is that it's complex, and I can't give you, like, there's no one size fits all solution. Everyone is a unique organization of experiences and elements. But typically the thing to kind of be curious about is what I mentioned earlier. Is it situational? When you masturbate and you're on your own, can you get an erection? If you're then with a partner and you can't, well, there's something going on there in terms of your performance, anxiety, or this kind of thing of not actually being relaxed or connected to your own body. So there are things that you can do, your own training or your own practice to learn how to be more connected to your own body. And it's these kind of simple body-based meditations, the way that you masturbate or the way that you touch your own body will kind of, it's like resourcing yourself for being in a partnered situation.
Okay.
So I think I talk a little bit in that same video as well. A lot of the things that apply to premature ejaculation in terms of tools or resources that you can equip yourself with are the same for erectile dysfunction.
Okay.
Allowing yourself to override the mental chatter, the performance anxious thoughts, and actually just tune into, okay, what can I feel right here in this present moment? Where am I tensing? Typically, guys who have erectile dysfunction, there's a lot of tension around the kind of lower belly, around the pelvis, around the glutes, everything is kind of squeezing and tightening. There's not much blood flow getting in, so there's an interruption to the blood flow. So learning to, let your hips move a little bit, learning to kind of massage the inner thighs, the kind of other areas of your body, not just your genitals, like not the more focus you put there, it's almost like the more pressure you experience. And, all of this, I don't have a penis, so on some level I will never really know, but this is from working with thousands of men. This is what I've seen. When you relax the pelvic floor, when you relax these constrictions, when you learn how to actually breathe down here into your belly instead of kind of up here in your chest and everything else being really, really tight, you give yourself a little bit more support and a little bit more option to relax and get an erection.
Yeah.
So something that I also, just a little trick, nasal breathing. So making sure that you're breathing through your nose boosts your levels of nitric oxide in your blood. And nitric oxide is basically like natural Viagra. It dilates your blood vessels. So if you notice that you're, kind of mouth breathing or just breathing shallow, learn to nose.
I learned something new there. Wow, I did not know that. Yeah. That's quite interesting. You talk about all the things surrounding ED and the problems that are happening there. It kind of reminds me of like sometimes when people have back pain and they think that getting a massage in their back is fixing it, and actually
you need to release the glutes.
Could be weak glute. It could be weak glutes, tight glutes, tight hips, tight quads,
tight diaphragm.
Right, exactly. So, and it's like, that massage feels good at the time, but you're not treating the root cause of the problem. So that's quite interesting you say that. So continuing on sort of with, so we spoke about some of the problems men come to you with. Now, you said about 25% is women.
My clients.
What are some of the common issues that women come to you with?
Yeah, so women, lots of different reasons and similar kind of categories like I explained for the men. The biggest problem or issue that I hear from women is I find it really difficult to relax and let go during sex. Also, my female clients, that's unfortunately, is just the way it is. The experiences of trauma and abuse tend to show up more in my female clients. I've worked with many, many, many male clients who also have histories of sexual abuse and trauma, but it does tend to show up more in my female clients, unfortunately. So those two kind of things, whether there's trauma or abuse in their history or not, that kind of tends to feed into this. I don't know how to relax. I don't kind of know how to get out of my head. I don't know how to let go and trust and kind of feel safe in these situations. And then that is preventing me from experiencing orgasms. Right. And that's like my experience, like that's my personal journey as well.
Okay, so you...
Yeah. Before I kind of started exploring this more kind of conscious sexuality stuff and tantra, I had probably in like 10, 12 years of being sexually active, more than that. Yeah, maybe 10, 15 years of being sexually active, I had maybe 2 or 3 orgasms with my partner. But I could orgasm on my own.
On your own, yeah.
During masturbation. So that's kind of the biggest thing. That's the umbrella. And then that shows up as 2 things: vaginismus, or kind of pain in the vagina or the vulva, vulvodynia, just generalized pain in the genitals, or specifically pain during penetration. And that can be it has a kind of spectrum, so it can be this like pain from maybe even just inserting a tampon to I just kind of get it's painful when my partner penetrates me.
Right.
So yeah, those are the kind of main female issues.
So you spoke about in 15 years, 10 to 15 years, 10 to 12 years, you only had
being sexually active.
Yeah, you only had 2 or 3 orgasms that you can remember. That kind of ties in exactly perfectly to what I'm about to talk about next. And it is about, so on my very first episode, on my second episode, I spoke to a lady named Kate, and she's a female-only coach. But she also posts on her page about like sexuality, empowering women and stuff. And she taught me about the gender orgasm gap. And that's something I never even knew. I mean, I probably would have, if you'd asked me, I would have probably said, yeah, that sounds about right. But I didn't know that was a thing. So that kind of led me to kind of do my own research. And what I had found recently, there was a study done in the Netherlands by Durex, funnily enough, and they found that about 79% of women, they surveyed about 3,000 women, and they found about 79% have said they'd never reach orgasm when they have sex, whereas about, I believe it was 89% of men say they do. So as a man, I'm going to ask you, what are some of the things men can do to help women reach that point? And obviously I guess in some cases where there are trauma and there's things where the situations where women can't relax, there's some things that maybe men can't really do to kind of affect that. I mean, maybe there is, you can tell me, but what are some of the practical things you would suggest, especially you work with couples too, so like what are some of the things we can do to be better, close this gap?
Yeah. So can I unpack the gap a little bit?
Go. Yes.
First of all, so yes, I would say that is the case. And there was also a really interesting article, study, or research project done by a woman called Peggy something Orenstein, I want to say, in the States, which like interviewed a large kind of group of male and female students, and kind of asked them like, what is your what do you consider to be like a good sexual experience? And the kind of bar for women was, well, a good sexual experience is something that doesn't hurt.
Okay.
And for guys was like, well, I orgasm, and that so that just like the female understanding and what the kind of narrative that we have and the messages that we have culturally of what a good sexual experience is, something that doesn't hurt.
Right, yeah. It's not right, yeah.
Like and I know that like this, a lot of this is changing now, social media is amazing, and there's so many sex positive influencers or, coaches or practitioners, and the messaging around female sexuality, female pleasure is so much more open than it has ever been, and I think that's amazing. So part of this for me as a someone whose practice is informed by tantra, my like idea for you as a guy is what would happen for you if sex did not end in ejaculation? If you could take that out of the equation, what does sex become? What do you focus on then?
You asking me?
Yeah.
So if I could take away ejaculation, what does sex become? Like for me?
Yeah. So just play with the concept that sex is not going to end in ejaculation. That's not what happens.
Right. It'd be pretty boring. I'd probably, it'd probably be pretty boring. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'd want to do it.
Interesting.
I don't think. I mean, if I knew that my partner was gonna ejaculate almost every single time, and it made her feel good, then I guess I would do it, but I wouldn't. I guess I wouldn't be looking forward to it as much. Especially, obviously, you're asking me as someone who pretty much every single time I can kind of pick and choose when I want to come. So I think that, yeah, if I knew that wasn't gonna happen, I feel like I'd be less inclined to want to do it.
Okay, so that's super interesting, because where your mind or your kind of the answer didn't go was, oh well, sensation, or like the other aspects of sex, maybe oral, or touching, fingers, breasts, sensuality, connection, that kind of exploration of sensation. So it becomes something that's more about play and exploration than this is what's gonna happen. But it's super interesting that, because it's like spot on. Well, if sex doesn't end in ejaculation, what's the point? And I think that mindset, or that narrative that we've been given, or that we believe is, or the mainstream kind of belief around sex, that's what is primarily limiting or creating this gap in orgasmicness.
Okay. And sorry to cut you, and is that because, like from what I've just said, men are not taking enough time to learn to enjoy all the other things apart from penetration and coming and then saying goodnight? We're not learning to enjoy, playing with a lady's nipples, or rubbing her thighs and kissing her neck, etc., etc. All the other things around just, doing the penetrating you. Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah,
okay,
pretty
cool.
much. That kind of limits you to a very narrow bandwidth,
right?
Or just kind of puts the blinkers on, So the female body typically, and again, every individual body is different. A great book that, if people are curious about this, men and women, is an incredible book called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski.
Okay.
I highly recommend that.
I'll put the Amazon link in the description.
So women's sexual profile in terms of orgasm, in terms of arousal, in terms of orgasmic buildup is very, very different to men. Your genitalia are all external, okay? We do have a clitoris, like that's, we can access that externally, but it takes a lot longer for women to access that kind of deep relaxation deep in the body with our internal landscape, our internal genitals. And I think in my experience, when there is this goal, or like that's the only place that we're trying to get to, the capacity or the potential for sensation that a woman's body has is being neglected. And I cannot give you an example of one woman that I know who hasn't at some point in her life been penetrated before she was ready. And I don't mean like that they've been raped or that it's been non-consensual, like that it's just been like too quick.
Right, like there was no foreplay, there was no build up to it.
There's not enough foreplay, or just like the not being guided by a woman's body. So rather than a man entering a woman is opening,
right,
to be penetrated. And I think when you shift that perspective and you shift that idea, it might take a little bit of a to click in, but and so part of that is down to men understanding and knowing what else to do, letting go of that egoic thing of I'm supposed to have a hard cock, I want a hard cock, I want to ejaculate, I want to get off. So there's part of it is like letting go of that and being willing to explore something else. Then kind of knowing where to begin, how to explore a woman's body, how to pleasure, how to play. And, a lot of this is about learning how to play, how to make mistakes, how to explore, how to experiment, how to try things out, how to kind of learn and approach your partner as somebody new every day. It's a completely new set of cells that's there, and everyone is different on each day. And then I think from the point of view of being a woman, what we can do to kind of support that gap is allowing ourselves to believe in our men, and like to have faith and love and trust in, this man is here for me, this man is present with me, I'm willing to open and surrender to that, I'm willing to communicate and lovingly guide and explain what is going on in my body and what I need and what I want, without feeling like I have to perform in some way, without feeling like I have to also buy into that goal of ejaculation or peak orgasm.
Right. So you kind of say, from a communication standpoint, women should feel, I always find that, and I said this to the coach that I had on before, is that I feel like women are not less inclined, but I guess they're not expected to kind of communicate their needs in a sexual relationship. Whereas a guy, they're almost like, well, they can kind of say how they want it, sort of thing. Whereas I feel like women, either they don't feel confident enough, obviously not every single woman, but some women don't feel confident enough to sort of be like, I'd prefer if you do this, or I want you to touch me here. So what can we do to help women build that confidence to communicate a bit more effectively in those situations? Because I find personally that if I'm with a woman that communicates, I actually enjoy it a lot better, because I think, okay, well, she's willing to kind of tell me what to do. And not even tell me what to do, but just tell me what she prefers, tell me where to touch her. Like, I like that.
That takes a bit of pressure off you.
Yeah, and it means,
yes.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, you like it like this, okay, this is how we're gonna do it. And that helps me, because I know, because like I was saying before, when you asked me what am I thinking, I'm always thinking, is she enjoying it? If she tells me, okay, I prefer you to do this, then I almost know, okay, she's definitely enjoying this, because I've had that communication. I've completely forgot what my original question was. But what can we do to kind of give women a bit more confidence to communicate, and how important is it that they communicate?
Well, something that I always recommend to the couples that I work with is that you talk about sex outside of the bedroom. Like you talk about what you want when you're not in that vulnerable, naked, potentially emotionally complex situation. I also kind of feel personally like if you can't talk about something that related to sex, then you're maybe not emotionally ready to actually go there. So you're doing things that you're not kind of in an integrated place to experience. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So if I'm not able to kind of say to my partner, like, yeah, I'm super curious about what some anal massage might feel like, and I'm a bit nervous about trying it, but I would like to do it, but can we go really slow, and maybe we can do it like this, and if I just ask you to stop, then this is how I want to do it, and maybe you just take your hands off, or maybe you just hold them still, or maybe we just use a finger to begin with. If you're not able to talk about that without an overwhelming emotional charge, and you just are doing it, Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like something isn't integrated,
Yeah.
something isn't in consent within your own body
Yeah.
or within that experience. So talk about your sexual life in the kitchen, you know, when you're doing the dishes.
Yeah.
Sit and have a conversation about it over the dinner table. Sit and talk about it on the sofa.
Yeah.
There is so much that can be revealed or learnt about each other by just sitting down and talking about okay, so when we have sex, this is what I experience. And I really love it when this happens and I kind of see this happening in your body, and then I feel this part of you and blah, blah, blah. Like that it's like, I mean, I'm sure you did this with sport. Like, you don't just play football, right? You watch videos, you look at your performance, you have stats, I'm sure you do all that kind of stuff. Like, I would love for people to have that same mentality or understanding around sex and intimacy as a skill that can be improved, and that you can be more skillful in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree.
And I love the like, I love my background as a PT because it has this amazing comparison to it. And for me, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, no, I agree fully. Because I remember, I can't remember, I was quite young and I watched a show on Channel 4, and I don't know why I remember this, but they were talking about, it's not sex, but they're talking about relationships and dating. And on the show, the guy was just saying that, like, we treat dating as if it's just something you do, but actually, you know, if you're single, it's practice. You know, you get better at it the more you do. So I kind of what you said there about, you know, having your partner and knowing what you're good at, maybe where you can improve. Those things are important. You know, you do a whole SWOT analysis.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, you don't have to be like strict about it. But I think so few couples, or, you know, in relationships, and this was certainly my experience before the relationship that I'm in now, so few couples actually talk about what's going on in their intimate life.
Do you feel like that? You feel like there's a little bit of an element where the woman or the man or the woman possibly doesn't want to embarrass or make the guy feel bad about himself, or maybe, and on the flip side, maybe there's some guys that they don't want to know because they might feel a little bit insecure, a bit worried about, or disappointed in themselves, where, okay, I'm not pleasing my partner. I feel like there might be a little bit of that. That's a bit of a barrier, bit of fragility.
Yeah, definitely.
Because of that.
And I'm sure it can go the other way as well. Again, you know, the dynamics in different relationships are different.
Yeah.
I hear a lot from male clients, like, I know that my wife isn't enjoying sex and I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to talk to her about it, and I don't want to upset her. So I think it goes both ways. Yeah. I think maybe that comes down, you could gender it, I guess, but maybe it comes down more to personality, upbringing, culture. You know, there's all sorts of factors that are in play there.
Yeah. And to keep on the line of female orgasms, you got a video that I watched again about some of the things that are stopping women from getting orgasms or for reaching an orgasm. And one of the things you mentioned was using a vibrator. Could you kind of explain that a bit more? Because I know quite a lot of women that use vibrators and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd be quite interested to kind of hear.
Yeah. So this again this is kind of the biggest change that I made in my life that enabled me to be able to relax and relax into orgasm, clitoral orgasm, I'm going to say, with my partner. and also enabled me to access other kinds of orgasms. So G-spot orgasms, squirting orgasms, cervical orgasms, womb orgasms. So
well, I didn't even know there were so many orgasms.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
This is the thing. This is why female sexuality is way more complicated and not just in that little narrow lane.
Yeah.
You know, I talked about this kind of thing of exploring what else your female partner's body might be able to access in terms of orgasmic sensation. Yes, there is more than just the clitoral orgasm, and maybe you've heard the G-spot orgasm. Yeah. It's probably quite a common one. So for me, I used to masturbate exclusively with a vibrator, and I could happily bash out multiple orgasms with my vibrator. I never used my fingers, and so my theory on this, and there maybe is some science, probably not, but this is anecdotal as well from a lot of women and a lot of friends that I've talked to. So basically, when you use a vibrator, that is an extremely high frequency, movement.
Yeah.
That is impossible for a partner to replicate with their fingers, with their tongue, with penetration or contact from their penis when they're penetrating you. So you're kind of, and if that's your exclusive way to access orgasm, you're kind of desensitizing your clitoris to subtler types of stimulation. If you kind of get used to that, it's like being electrocuted. Like you need that high intensity, high frequency stimulation. So it's going to be very, very difficult for you to relax and access orgasm through your partner's fingers or tongue or whatever. So I'm like, all power to women and their vibrators. I think they're wonderful inventions, but I think that, give yourself a break from it if you feel or know that is like you're dependent on that for orgasm. Leave it alone for 21 days minimum, but don't just stop having sex or stop masturbating or stop connecting to your sexual energy. Use that time in the kind of vibrator holiday to explore self-touch, to have your partner explore genital massage. Maybe just do a little plug for my online courses where you can learn how to give your partner genital massage. And that will kind of potentially open up those different nerve endings, those different neural pathways to that lower level of stimulation, that more relaxed arousal. It's also going to potentially open up those different internal pathways as well, which actually stimulate orgasm on different nerves. So that your clitoris is innervated by the pudendal nerve, which is the same as is innervated in the head of the penis. But then internally, you get access to the pelvic nerve and the vagus nerve, which is where you're then, if you're working with cervical orgasm or stimulation of your cervix, that's where you're kind of getting those full body orgasms. Okay,
wow. So have you given up vibrators yourself personally?
Yeah, my God.
Really?
Yeah.
So you don't use a vibrator at all?
No.
Wow.
I occasionally use something called, it's an awful name, a satisfier. It's like this little, it's terrible name, but it's so good. It's like a little, it uses air pressure, like,
okay,
puts out air pressure. So those are slightly different. They don't
it's not a
buzz.
constant.
They just kind of put out air onto your clitoris.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I am not a fan now. Okay. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I do. So someone listening to this might be like, well, what? She's, this is how I get my pleasure, and she's telling me to stop it. No way. Great. If you are in love with your vibrator and you're happy with it and it's working for you, and that, don't change anything. Yeah.
But this is mainly if you're using a vibrator, but you can't get orgasm through your partner. Then you may want to consider.
Try this as an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you fully. Okay, that makes sense though. I can kind of see how that would make sense if you say to someone, you're putting yourself in a position where you're getting an orgasm through this electric toy, which no man on this planet can replicate. Not that I know,
woman.
or woman, right? Not that I know of anyway. So yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So obviously, I'm a health and fitness coach. You're a qualified PT, and you're into CrossFit, and you got a Whoop.
Me.
You got a Whoop band on, so I know you do CrossFit when I see the Whoop band. So
is that a thing?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people I know that do CrossFit have Whoop bands.
Oh, that's not why I got mine. I got mine for the sleep.
Yeah,
because I was really interested in kind of having better sleep, and
you should try the Aura Ring. I don't know if you've read about that. Yeah, Aura Ring is supposed to be for sleep, supposed to be like the best thing. But something that I talk about on my social media is the role that health and fitness plays in your sexual health. For men, a lot of men, egomaniacs, they want to boost their performance, right? And even for women, it's a confidence thing. I want to get rid of my love handles. I want a bigger bum, all these kind of things. A lot of vanity and aesthetic goals that we have.
Because that's what's pumped into our psyche by the media and by culture.
Exactly. But just from a holistic point of view, I like to let people know that actually, if you're maybe a tad overweight or maybe you're obese, and losing weight or getting fit, or just generally getting fitter, is going to have a positive impact on your sexual health. And I've had maybe about 3 or 4 clients that I can think of right now that have messaged me privately, and they said, my partners spoke about how sex life has changed or something like that.
Yeah, it's like an unexpected
right, and that's not what they came to me for. But my question to you is, firstly, what role has health and fitness kind of played in your life and in your sexual life too, if it has?
Yeah, personally, well, I've always been very active.
Okay.
I did gymnastics as a kid from like the age of about 5. I did a lot of sport at school. I swam. I was one of those kids like that, and my parents just supported. If I had an interest in something, I tried synchronized swimming at one point.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, okay, you can go along to some classes, and it didn't last very long. But played tennis and played netball at school and athletics, and I studied GCSE and A-level PE, and it's always been something that like I've been active and sporty, and that was encouraged by my parents as well. So it's always been something that has like been part of my character and has helped me to kind of be energetic, be sociable, be optimistic, be able to kind of deal with challenge and adversity, and have discipline, and be able to play as well. This kind of idea of play and practice. I did music at university, but I was very, very close to going and doing sports science or something in sport. But at that point, that I was kind of, it wasn't really understood that you could have a career, or that could be something that was serious,
Right.
So it was a bit, so I went and did music instead. But then I think in my early 20s, or my first year at university, I actually became quite depressed and didn't exercise. And I think those two things like were very, very closely linked. And then the kind of the final few years of university, I started teaching pole dancing. My friend and I set up a pole exercise society through the athletic union, and that was kind of my way back into movement, activity, exercise. So for me, it's something that I just love moving my body. I love being active. If I sit still for too long, like I can literally feel myself, going downwards. So even like through the lockdowns and things of the last year, just getting out for like 30 minutes walk every day, like a good fast walk, was kept me sane.
Yeah, 100%.
And
I'm with you on
it
that.
doesn't have to be like, I love CrossFit and I love resistance training and I love yoga, and you know, I love things that are intense for my body. I used to do triathlons, I've done a half marathon. So there's always been like, I love the challenge of it, mental challenge. But I don't think you have to be like an elite athlete, or, you know, you don't have to be in the gym every day. You find something that brings you joy, like that is active and brings you joy. Maybe that's walking, maybe that's canoeing, maybe that's wild water swimming, maybe it's shot putting, you know, something that allows you to engage with your body and feel activated, feel joy, joy in movement. And then I think the way that plays into sex and intimacy is a little bit about what you said. Exercise, movement, activity lowers stress. The lower your stress, the higher your sex drive is going to be. It releases endorphins, which again kind of contribute to your feelings of wanting to connect, wanting to be intimate. Boosts testosterone in men and women, which contributes to sexual desire and like the desire and the need to be intimate and be sexually active. So I think on that level, it's super important.
Yeah.
But do you want me to talk a little bit more about kind of specifically like stretching or how?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to ask you, do you ever give any of your clients some, obviously you might not, actually you're qualified to do it, so I guess you could tell them exactly what they need to be doing in the gym, but do you ever prescribe exercise? Like, okay, actually I would consider maybe working out some more, becoming a bit more physically active. Is that something that you do?
Not as directly as that.
Okay.
It's not my wheelhouse anymore, but I do. I do always recommend to people who are struggling with PE or erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, just doing some stretching. Like do some yoga or do these simple stretches, like a butterfly stretch, you know,
where you're seated
and your feet together and you let your knees drop out.
That's hard.
Yeah, I mean, stretches for the hip flexors, stretches for the glutes, and some stretches for the lower belly. Like those will often do more for you than, you know, like taking any kind of medication or dealing with it in a pharmacological way.
Okay.
So I kind of suggest some specific stretches to people sometimes.
Okay.
But more often than not, actually, guys that come to me, I suggest that if they're willing to or curious, they try some kind of martial arts practice. Like they try some jiu-jitsu, they try some kickboxing. You mentioned, no, it wasn't you, it was someone else earlier. That kind of contact sport and being around other men and that kind of competition or play as well. You get a lot of that dynamic in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, the rolling.
They're rolling, yeah.
That is so good for your testosterone and your confidence, your awareness of your body, your strength, your movement, your breath control. Like often that's more appealing to men than doing a yoga class. Yeah. So that's kind of something that I just try and stick in there. It's
funny you say that because I picked up Muay Thai over the past, it's actually been a year now. Wow. So I picked up Muay Thai. I've always wanted to do combat sports, but I feel like in England, when you're a kid, obviously you got the major sports, football, rugby, cricket. That's about it, really. But in England, we specialise quite young in sports. So I only ever played football, right? I never played anything else. I did a bit of swimming, did a bit of field hockey, but I was just good at that naturally. But then I just stopped because football was the number one thing. And what I realised after living in America for about 4 years, over there's the complete opposite. In high school, you run track, you play American football, you play soccer, you play basketball, And they do that for years. Maybe as they get older, they start to do 2 or 3. Then when they're about to go off to university/college, they pick one if they're going to be like a college athlete. So I've always wanted to do combat sports. And what I realized now that I do it on a regular basis is that with football, because it's a team sport, and I've got to rely on another 10 guys to get me the ball, especially because I'm a striker. I've kind of got to rely on my team to give me the ball to do what I want to do. There's a lot less element of control, whereas Muay Thai, it's just me. You know, if I'm sparring and I get hurt, it's just me. Or if I'm trying to hurt somebody, it's just me. Not that I'm intentionally trying to hurt somebody, but I think one big thing is with the Muay Thai and just boxing as well is that the aggression and kind of that release. I think football for me is more like a skill thing. I just love the skill of it and being able to do it. And there's obviously a natural talent as well to it. Whereas Muay Thai, I'm not naturally talented in it. It's something I've only just picked up.
Work a little bit harder for it.
But yeah, that aggression as well. I think there's a different level of aggression. Because in football, you can be aggressive, right? I can tackle someone, I can elbow someone, I can push them, but in Muay Thai, I can punch you in the... Really I can kick you in the head.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, I definitely feel like my energy's increased since doing that. Like on a day-to-day, I just feel... and I feel a lot more confident, which is... I've always been quite a confident person, but I definitely feel like knowing... It could be a little bit of an ego thing, actually, but I feel like knowing that I can... Maybe not, I'm not saying I'm a professional fighter, but I've got a little bit of a skill set there, makes you, I don't know, makes me feel a bit more confident just as a person.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that.
So I think sometimes there's a misconception. I'll see what your experience is, that people or men who do martial arts or like combat sports, it's like this idea that boys who play video games are going to be violent in the rest of their life.
Right.
Like, as if doing combats, like how have you found it doing combat sports over the past year and entering that? Have you suddenly like been starting picking fights everywhere?
Yeah, I think it makes you more disciplined, and it makes you actually, you become more aware of your own power. And I think that you get that though because I used to work in a gym in Victoria called My Manor, and it's run by one guy who used to be a professional MMA fighter, and another guy used to be a professional boxer, and they're the most relaxed, down-to-earth guys you'd ever meet. And I've got a really good friend who's been doing jiu-jitsu for about 5 years, and what I realized is that a lot of the times when you get these guys that have competed at high levels of combat sport, they're the most relaxed. They're the most humble people. They're the ones that are like, I do not want to fight you. You know, if we're at a bar or a club, I do not want to get in a fight, because they're aware of the power that they hold.
Yeah.
So I think it goes the opposite way.
Yeah, it's like some kind of like inner alignment.
Yeah.
With, this kind of... I think martial arts as well, not all of them, but there is an awareness of energy and how... how people are made of energy and how energy works and how energy is transferred. And I think that plays really well into sex and intimacy, that sex and intimacy is an exchange of energy. And I think if you understand a little bit like how that feels in your body and how to kind of... The martial artist that I know, and my partner is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so I really see this in him. He just sort of has this perception or understanding of how someone's body moves, and I think that if you can have that awareness as a man and as a woman during sex, it's like it brings a whole other dynamic to it. It's not just something that you're kind of trying to get off with each other. You're actually moving and energetically engaged. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, for sure. And I think with jiu-jitsu as well, that's it, or even wrestling as well, it makes it, because they're in such close quarters.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu is like fine margins. You've really got to feel somebody's body, and it's interesting that another thing with jiu-jitsu as well is a lot of people think, to the untrained eye, you might see someone like me, I could go up against someone who's 5'8", 160 pounds, and he could probably, because I don't have no skill in jiu-jitsu, but he could be a black belt. He could probably ragdoll me on the floor.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it is quite interesting because they know how to maneuver the body so well.
How to use your energy
against you.
It's
quite a powerful thing.
Yeah. Have you ever tried it?
I've never tried it, but I've got a friend that
really should.
He's always invited me down to the gym. It's just, I don't know. I want to do it though.
What's holding you back?
I don't think anything's holding me back. I think it's just I need to find a way to fit it in. I need to find a way to fit it in, because right now I'm playing semi-professional football, doing the Muay Thai, training myself in the gym with other people as well.
Would it potentially have, like, if you were to get injured doing jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, would that have an impact on your football?
Yeah. But I mean, for me, the football was just, I'm just in it because I still love the game. And I think when you play semi-pro, it's just, there's different levels to semi-pro. I mean, you still get paid, but it's more because I just love it. I love it more than I love playing other sports. So I don't want to jeopardize it just yet. But I think I'm 25, so it's not long till I'm done doing that anyway.
That's crazy.
So yeah.
I think this is the such an interesting thing about professional sports people, that you have such a kind of limited window of time.
It is, right, yeah.
To do it, and then,
It is quite short. You mentioned one thing that I wanted to just pick up on before we kind of wrap up a little bit. You mentioned about guys should be thinking about maybe stretching and having a more holistic approach before turning to meds.
Yes.
Viagra or whatever that is. Yeah. So I just wanted to know what are your thoughts on some of those kind of quick, I like to view them as quick fixes. Like what are your thoughts on those things?
What are my thoughts on those things? I really understand why men would want to use them. And I think that in some circumstances, it's really beautiful that you would want to ensure that you can be hard and present to penetrate your partner. Yeah, to be hard and to be present for your partner. But I guess so I guess that it's a comparison to the vibrator thing in a way. If you are dependent on it, or it is a crutch, then that's where it kind of gets into a bit of a sticky situation. And I've worked with several clients in that's their kind of reason for coming to sessions. Like, I haven't had sex for a long, long time without taking Viagra, and I realised that it's kind of fucking up my body, and there's all sorts of not great side effects to Viagra or Cialis as well, especially with long-term use. So they're kind of coming to me because they want to learn how to reconnect with their body and be able to relax during sex and access arousal through touch and through physical sensation without that reliance on it. So it's kind of like, I get it, and it's useful in some settings, and yeah, I understand it. But the way that Viagra works is it expands the blood vessels in the erectile tissue around your penis and the musculature around your pelvis. So expanded or dilated blood vessels means more blood flow, and then that means engorgement in the erectile tissue, so erections. That is a state that you can access on your own. Like we talked about, just nasal breathing is a really good way to boost that natural Viagra, nitric oxide in your blood. So that, and genital massage or intimate massage, having those kind of sessions that I do, learning to do that for yourself, not just jerking off in masturbation.
I think that a lot of men have a tendency to just do that.
Yeah. And I mean, we haven't even touched on this, but part of my work in the past year has been as a masturbation coach, like with virtual sessions for people, because
teaching people how to
touch and massage and pleasure their own bodies, and not just be focused on this very small area of your skin. Like there's so much more available to you. So does that kind of answer the
Yeah.
It's not a really strong opinion, but it's,
Yeah. So, yeah. So you wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing, but you would say it's not something you want to become reliant on.
Yeah, same
you
as
want,
vibrators.
You want to learn how to naturally be able to do these things, and
Yeah.
kind of like I was saying with the back pain as well, getting to the root cause of the issue and not just kind of plastering it. Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. Wow. So I feel like we could even keep going.
And I love, this is the thing, I love talking about my work, and I love what I do for a living, and I'm always so excited to talk to people about it, because I've learned stuff about a different perspective, a different male perspective today. I learn something new from every person that I engage with. And I think that's the wonderful thing about sex, about intimacy, about conversation.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. I really want to thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. I really enjoyed that conversation. I learned a lot. In that. I said it a few times that I didn't know that. So I think anyone who watches or listens on whatever platform you're listening on, I think you'll definitely take some gems and a really good insight into how you can potentially get more in touch with yourself, with your partner, so on and so forth. I will leave all your social media and your website in the description so people know where to find Libby. If you may need some of her services, please do not hesitate to reach out to her. But yeah, that was a really good episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
guys. That is it. The Spectrum of Health podcast. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Peace.